Scott Bakula's Enterprise casting revived a Star Trek trend that continues today. When Star Trek Enterprise premiered in 2001, it arrived during a critical moment for the franchise. After nearly 15 consecutive years of Star Trek dominating television with The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, audiences were beginning to feel franchise fatigue. The idea of another prequel, even one that promised to show the earliest days of Starfleet, risked feeling redundant. But Enterprise had an ace up its sleeve, a commanding lead who wasn't just another captain, but a recognizable star with cross-generational appeal, Scott Bakula. Bakula's casting as Captain Jonathan Archer wasn't just a practical move. It was a deliberate revival of a Star Trek tradition, one that continues to define the franchise's casting philosophy to this day. His presence reconnected Star Trek to its roots of casting charismatic, TV-proven, and often genre-savvy actors who could carry the moral and emotional weight of leadership. 2 decades later, the Bakula blueprint remains alive and well in how Star Trek chooses its leading figures. The legacy of a recognizable lead. When Star Trek, the original series, launched in 1966, William Shatner was already a known name. He'd headlined The Twilight Zone, For the People, and several TV dramas, giving the fledgling sci-fi show a familiar face for mainstream audiences. Gene Roddenberry understood that having a recognizable, classically trained lead would ground the show's wild futurism. Star Trek: The Next Generation continued that approach in 1987 by casting Patrick Stewart, a respected Shakespearean actor. Stewart's theatrical gravitas gave Captain Picard an instantly credible moral authority, and elevated the show far above typical syndicated fare. Likewise, Avery Brooks, Deep Space Nine, and Kate Mulgrew, Voyager, were established, serious actors with commanding presences. By the late 1990s, however, that trend had faded. While Voyager's Mulgrew brought prestige and experience, much of the show's supporting cast leaned toward relative newcomers. With Enterprise, the producers consciously returned to the strategy of anchoring the show with a known TV icon, and that's where Scott Bakula came in. Scott Bakula's star power bridged generations. Before Enterprise, Scott Bakula had already achieved cult status through his starring role in Quantum Leap 1989 to 1993, where he played time-traveling physicist Dr. Sam Beckett. His performance earned him a Golden Globe Award and 4 Emmy nominations. To Star Trek fans, Bakula wasn't just another sci-fi actor. He was the embodiment of optimism, curiosity, and empathy, qualities deeply aligned with Gene Roddenberry's ideals. When his casting was announced, it wasn't just about name recognition, it was symbolic. Bakula's Sam Beckett had spent years leaping through time to fix what once went wrong, and now, as Captain Jonathan Archer, he was stepping into humanity's early voyages into the stars. It was almost poetic. The quintessential time traveler was now the man charting the very beginning of Star Trek's timeline. Producers Rick Berman and Brannon Braga understood the importance of this connection. They needed someone with warmth, integrity, and leadership presence to ground the show's darker tone and morally gray setting, a pre-Federation world where humanity still had a lot to learn. Bakula's natural charisma and sense of decency brought heart to Enterprise's more rugged, uncertain vision of the future. Reviving a Star Trek casting tradition, by choosing Bakula, Enterprise subtly reintroduced a pattern that Star Trek would rely on again in its modern incarnations. Casting well-known, versatile actors with proven dramatic or genre backgrounds as series leads. This Bakula trend would echo through the franchise in the years to come. After Enterprise ended in 2005, Star Trek went dormant on television for over a decade. But when it returned with Star Trek Discovery in 2017, the creative team made a similar casting choice, hiring Sonequa Martin Green, already beloved for her role as Sasha Williams on The Walking Dead. Like Bakula, Martin Green brought an established fan base and strong screen presence. She was capable of balancing the emotional intensity and moral complexity that Discovery demanded. The series' focus on her character, Michael Burnham, as a flawed but idealistic hero directly mirrored Bakula's Archer, both human, both conflicted, both carrying the burden of pioneering Starfleet ideals in uncertain times. The pattern continues, from Bakula to Mount, Yo, and Stewart. The Bakula effect didn't stop with Discovery. When Star Trek Strange New Worlds debuted in 2022, the franchise once again turned to an actor with charisma, experience, and an existing fan following, Anson Mount. Mount, fresh from his role in Hell on Wheels, brought rugged authority and quiet confidence to Captain Christopher Pike. Much like Bakula's Archer, Mount's Pike embodied the old-school, humanistic spirit of Star Trek. Both men projected optimism and decency without naivety. Their portrayals weren't about perfection. They were about the struggle to live up to the ideals of leadership. Similarly, Michelle Yeoh, cast as Captain and later Emperor Georgiou, exemplified the same tradition. Yeoh's global fame, bolstered by her martial arts and dramatic film career Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Tomorrow Never Dies, gave Star Trek both international credibility and gravitas. Casting a world-renowned performer echoed the reasoning behind hiring Bakula. Bring in someone who transcends the usual boundaries of sci-fi television. And, of course, when Star Trek Picard brought Patrick Stewart back, it underscored the power of the recognizable lead more than ever. Stewart's return symbolized continuity, but it also demonstrated Star Trek's ongoing commitment to its actors as living symbols of the franchise's enduring ideals. Why Bakula's casting still resonates? Bakula's casting worked because it balanced nostalgia with innovation. On one hand, Enterprise was designed to feel more accessible to mainstream viewers, and a familiar face helped bridge that gap. On the other, Bakula wasn't just stunt casting. He brought emotional depth and moral nuance to Archer, a man learning to lead in a world without the Federation's moral safety net. Archer wasn't Picard or Kirk. He was flawed, sometimes impulsive, and occasionally prejudiced. Yet Bakula's humanity made those flaws relatable. He played Archer as a man striving to do the right thing even when the universe didn't yet have rules for it. That very quality, portraying captains and leaders as aspirational but imperfect, became a defining trait of modern Star Trek. We see that same DNA in Michael Burnham, who struggles with mutiny and guilt before growing into her role as captain. We see it in Pike's self-awareness about his fate, in Seven of Nine's uneasy command in Star Trek Voyager's Aftermath, and in Jean-Luc Picard's late-life reckoning with his legacy. Each of these modern characters owes something to the path Enterprise and Bakula's Archer helped reopen. That Star Trek could once again tell stories about leaders who learn, change, and fail, and still inspire. The broader trend, familiar faces, fresh stories. Outside of captains, modern Star Trek continues to rely on casting that echoes the Bakula formula, recognizable talent with crossover appeal. Star Trek Discovery cast Doug Jones, already famous for his creature work in Guillermo del Toro films, as the empathetic Kelpien officer Saru. Picard featured Jerry Ryan, Jonathan Frakes, and Brent Spiner, actors whose return played both on nostalgia and deep emotional connection with fans. Even side characters, like Paul Wesley's James T. Kirk or Rebecca Rameen's Number One, reflect the same approach. Cast established, likable performers who can embody complex legacies. This trend extends beyond Star Trek television. The Kelvin Timeline films did the same, casting Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, and Zoe Saldana, each with existing fan bases or genre credentials. Pine's balance of humor and sincerity, like Bakula's, made the human element of Star Trek feel immediate again. Bakula's unlikely influence on Star Trek's future. In hindsight, Enterprise might not have been the most universally beloved Star Trek series, but Scott Bakula's casting proved visionary. It demonstrated that recognizable leads could help reboot and refresh Star Trek without diluting its ideals. The show's mixed reception didn't erase